Tayla Relph, welcome to Aiden Meets Interesting People. Good to have you.
Thank you. I'm glad you classify me as an interesting person. I'm not sure if it's for a good reason or a bad reason.
Absolutely. Well, this podcast has been a year in my head, and I always come back to it when I meet someone like you, who I think is super interesting and has this sort of, not a past or a history, that makes you sound like a criminal, but a background, I guess, that is super, super interesting. And this is one of my only ways to be able to sit down and chat with these people because, you know, to be honest, if I invited you to the pub and said, let's go and talk about bike racing, I'd probably get in trouble. Your boyfriend would fight me.
And one-sider, and you never know what will come out of me after one drink.
So we're in your garage. Is this your happy place?
Yeah, pretty much. Look, I don't know much about a lot about motorbikes in terms of how to do engine work. I know how to ride it quickly, but if you're asking me anything about the engine or anything like that, I have no idea. So it's my happy place in the means of I get to look at it and stare at it and look at how pretty it is and
Polish
just
it up.
kind of think like this is my bank account right here. Like this is why there is no money in my bank account.
Your entire savings account is
Pretty
just
much
here in one shot.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I also like it because Ted, my partner, he races as well, and I just get to watch him work on my bike instead of me doing it, and I don't get my hands dirty. So
Right, so you know where the go fast is, and you know where the turn is, and that's just about it.
pretty much, yep.
Right. Can you tell me about the bikes that you race now? Like what series are you in, and how is that series? What's the hierarchy of those series in Australian motorsport?
Yeah, so this bike here is a Yamaha R3. So I race this bike in the Australian Championships, and we have two categories in the Australian Championship for this. So we've got the Australian SuperSport 300 class, and then we also have the Australian R3 class. So the SuperSport 300 class, that's sort of comprised of a whole heap of different bikes. There's the Yamahas, the Kawasaki's, and yeah, that's it for those ones. And then the R3 class.
It's a bit of a mixed manufacturer.
Bit of a mixed one, yeah. And then KTMs are in that one as well. And then the R3 class is just specifically just a race with the R3s.
R3s.
Yeah.
So obviously if you're racing in a mixed class, you can probably change the setup of the bikes a bit more. If you're racing in the R3s, do they really have to be fairly standard throughout the series?
That was the rules sort of so these bikes, I think that this category has been out for maybe 5 or so years. Don't quote me on that, I'm not sure. But it hasn't been around for very long. So when the R3s first came out and that was a split championship, the rules were you couldn't touch your bike. And then in the SuperSport 300, you did have a little bit of leniency with what you could do with them. And then sort of throughout the years, we were getting faster on them, and it was getting a little bit dangerous as such, because we were just trying to push the bikes to their limits and we were pushing them past their limits. And then that's when they kind of said, yep, cool, you can do, you can have the aftermarket suspension, and just, they made it so that it was a little bit safer so that we could also go quicker. So yeah, back in the day, you could do different things to the bike, but now this year and last year, you could make a few more changes to it. So
yeah. Talking about safety, I stalked your Instagram. Your first Instagram post, you're running over your own neck. There's a photo of you in hospital with a black tire mark across your neck.
Yep. That was from my own bike as well.
Yeah. And then there's a video of you running over your own neck.
Yep. Is that where the interesting people come from? Like, I'm sure there's not very many people you could talk to that have been like, I've run over my own neck. Yeah. Yep. So obviously the sport is as safe as it could be. What can you do really safety wise when you're riding bikes? Like, these bikes get to 200 k's an hour, but you can get upwards of 300 kilometers an hour on a super bike. So we do whatever we can to stay safe. And that was on a Moto 3. That was at Darwin at Hidden Valley, and my the old famous saying, my ambition outweighed my talent. And I was trying to make a pass on somebody for second place, and my foot peg dug into the ground and it lifted the back wheel up, and then I went to high side. But then as the bike was sliding out, the back wheel got back on the ground, and I just went straight over the handlebars and just sort of went down under the bike. But it was great because there wasn't much damage to the bike, because as we were sliding along the road, I was underneath it. So all the damage was on me, nothing on the bike. I still went to hospital, they cleaned out my neck with no anaesthetic, no numbing or anything like that, and then went back to the track the next day and raced.
Continued to race.
Yep.
Oh, I can't imagine that. When you go surfing, you get like the wetsuit rash on your neck and you can't go surfing for like 3 days. I can't imagine running over my own neck on a motorbike.
Yeah, well, that's not even the worst one. That's not even the worst sort of thing that I've done. I've got a tendency.
Fill me in.
So,
give me a few top injuries.
So, my number one, like the running over my neck was probably number 2 of the injury list.
How old were you when you ran over your own neck?
I was 15, I think. Yeah, 15 maybe. But then it was about 3 years ago, I think, and we were racing at Phillip Island. It was on this bike, and it was the second corner on the first lap. So, we were all bunched up, especially in this class. There's 45 riders all on the same track trying to be first. And in turn 2, you kind of, you hit the first apex, you run out, and then you hit a second one. And I went, as we were going out to that second apex, somebody came on the inside of me, and their brake disc somehow, obviously we stick our legs out and stuff, so my leg was sticking out, and his brake disc just hit it at my knee at the perfect level, and his brake disc went through my leg into my knee and to my femur, and literally just sliced through my leg like a hot knife on butter. I didn't crash. I finished the race, and I
didn't crash. Didn't pull you off.
No. I elbowed him off me, and then that kind of like separated us, and then I kept on racing. I think
what sort of speeds are we doing here at coming out of that second bend?
I think you're sitting at about 100, maybe a little bit over 100k an hour.
Right. Yeah. So you got 100 kilometre an hour.
Yeah, and then
rotating brake disc, right?
And the brake disc get to
it's super hot.
Yeah.
So you basically got a hot circular.
It was
saw.
like a hot knife going through butter, but luckily it cauterized. But anyway, so long story short, I finished the race. I think I finished 12th out of 45 riders with a massive laceration in my knee. I got off the bike. I tried to put weight on my knee, and I fainted. Everyone thought that I was just really unfit, fainting after a race.
Right.
And I was like, no, I think I've lost my kneecap. I couldn't see it. Somebody came over, lifted up my leathers, and they were like, there's no kneecap there.
So while you're racing, have you got time to sort of glance down and go like, oh,
no,
that doesn't look good?
No, the funny thing was that I was annoyed because my leathers were
torn.
My leathers were torn. I had no idea. It was just like a bit of a wet wind coming through, and I was like, I was so mad. But anyway, so I had a massive argument with the medics when I went to the ambulance, and they were like, you need to go to hospital. You need to go have surgery on this now, because it was about 3 to 5 centimeters away from my femoral artery. It was a clean cut.
That's quite a serious artery.
Could have died.
That's a sturdy one.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and they were like, you need to go to hospital. You need surgery, and I was like, no, I'm not going. This is the first race of the weekend. This is the beginning of the championship. I'm not going. Put stitches on it and let me go. And they were like, we can't. No, you need to go to hospital. And I was like, no. I was like, I just finished a race with it open, so clearly I can keep on racing. And I was like, put stitches in it and let me go. And they were like, righty-ho. Anyway, they just kept saying, you can't do it. And I was like, no, really? Do it. And they were like, righto, well, if we do it, we can't put very much anesthetic into your leg, because you need to be able to feel it to know if it rips when you're out there. And I was like, that's fine. And I was like, do it with little anesthetic. So they did. They put 4 stitches in my leg. I kept on racing for the rest of the weekend, and then went to the after party still, as you do.
Nice.
And then,
put a bit more anesthetic in your body at that point.
Yeah, pretty much, just so I couldn't feel it. And then, got flown home, and then had emergency surgery, and I was in hospital for 5 days. So, and then raced 2 weeks later and got the lap record at Wakefield. So
nice. Sucked in ambulance people. Don't tell me what to do.
Taught them wrong.
All right. So the class that you race in is a mixed gender class, isn't it? So there's obviously predominantly males, and then how many females in, say, the R3 and then the SuperSport categories?
So it's hard to say, really. For so many years, I was the only female who was racing full time in the actual championship itself. So there are a few more females sort of coming through, but they're not really racing full time in a sense with that.
Is that a cost thing or geography?
Just because there's not very many females doing it, and it's one of those things. It's a very, very expensive sport. So if you're not completely committed into it, then what's the point? And it's been really, really good to see more females getting into it, because when I started, I was one of the only females in my class for 8 years or something like that. And it was kind of weird in a way when the first female came, and it's funny because I am so much more determined to beat a female than I am a male. If I have a female beat me, there's a really, really good racer in Australia as well. Her name's Laura Brown, and she, her and I are pretty similar. pace, and I remember like the first time she beat me in qualifying, and I was ropeable. Like, I have never been so mad about somebody beating me before, and it was just because I've always been known as like the fastest female sort of thing. And then when Laura came and she beat me in qualifying, and I was like, no, and I've never been more determined in my life. Like, I went home, I started training, like, but it's great determination in a way.
It's good motivation.
But yeah, more females are getting into it for sure, but yeah, there's 2 females compared to 45 males in our class.
You're right. Right. And is it competing against the males obviously motivates you because you're like, screw these guys, I'm gonna smoke them. Is it harder to race as a female? Is there an advantage into being male and maybe being stronger in order to be able to wrestle the bike, or is it just once the bike's moving and you can get it to go back and forth, it really doesn't make much difference?
I don't think that there's a difference. I think there's quite a large misconception really that, if you're a female, you're disadvantaged. But, I've made it pretty evident throughout all of my racing that it's not, it's not a disadvantage being a female. I've won races in the Australian Championship. I've gotten on the podium in one of the most competitive classes in Australia. Like, I've gone overseas, I've done all that. So I think that alone just shows that there isn't that difference that people think that there is. Like, yes, it's hard for me to sort of get that easy muscle mass that a lot of the males can, and I'm quite short as well, but I can't really. I've tried racing a 600 and I wasn't strong enough, couldn't touch the floor on the ground. But again, there's another female over in New Zealand, Avalon Biddle. She actually won the 600 championship. But
really?
But again, she's shorter than me, but she trains an absolute butt off, and she actually sort of changed a few things around on the 600 to suit her small size. Okay. So there are a lot of females doing really cool things in this sport, but and like I said, there's such a misconception around it. But,
I would honestly believe that I made the link with horse racing that female jockeys do equally as well as male jockeys, because it really doesn't matter, because you're not. I mean, and I don't know anything about horse racing, so someone can write to me and go, "You're full of crap, Aiden." But you're not wrestling the horse around; you're guiding it more so.
Exactly.
Whereas when I watch motorbike racing, I'm seeing someone come in and they've got it leaned right over on the right, and then they've got to flick it back to the left-hand side and go equally as far on the left-hand side, which I can imagine takes a hell of a lot of upper body and core strength and legs just to hang on to the thing. Definitely.
And I think it's just one of those things, like, if you are a female in the sport and you are good at it, then that you do have to work that little bit harder to get, gain that extra muscle mass to be able to do something like that. Like, even me, I don't really go to the gym much anymore, but when I do race in the championship, I go to the gym all the time, and I just still can't quite get, I can't get that muscle up that I need to.
Big. I mean, racers aren't big guys, are they? Look at Valentino Rossi and Stoner. They're pretty skinny.
They're not at all. But there's like Anna Carrasco. She won the world championship in this category, in the 300 category. For the world championship, she's won that. Avalon Biddle won a New Zealand championship. I've won races in the Australian championship. So I think bit by bit it's becoming more obvious that being a female is no hindrance in what you do.
So what is the barrier then? Why aren't there as many females?
I don't know. It's one of those things. For me personally, I hate whenever I tell somebody who, maybe doesn't know me or anything like that I race motorbikes, and they just instantly think that I ride at the back. I've had so many sexist comments said to me, like, oh, it's good to see, it's good to see you out there giving it a crack.
Coming
and then
23rd
I get
or 24th.
And then I get really defensive, and I'm like, no, like, I've actually won races in the championship, and I've found I have to change my wording as to how I go about saying that I race motorbikes, because if I just say, I race motorbike, they're like, oh yeah, cool, you're giving it a crack, you're at the back, you're probably getting lapped. Like, you can just see that, and then I know that that's what they're thinking, because when I start to talk about my results and say, like, I've gone over the world to race, I've done all this, you kind of see their eyes just be like,
actually, she's legit.
And like, literally, some people have been like, oh, so you're actually good at what you do. And I'm like, well, yeah, funnily enough, like, I am good at what I do. Thank you. Like, not sure if I'm going to take that as a compliment or not, but look, who knows?
Dishonest
really?
Backpedaling from them at that point. Actually.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things. It's a male sport, but why? Like, why is it? No one can actually answer that question, and I think that's maybe how we need to go about it when people say it's a male-dominated sport. Well, why?
Yeah.
Like, what genetically is stopping females from being in the sport? We don't know. Like,
can't think of any. I don't know. I don't know. Hang on to the bike and just drive its head off.
Exactly.
So on a weekend, so are you racing in the SuperSport category and the R3 in the same weekend?
Yes.
So they race
separately.
Yeah. Okay.
Separately and still in the same championship.
What's a weekend for you? Yeah, separately. But what's a weekend for you look like?
a massive
busy
one
by the sounds of it
for a race weekend. So especially doing the two categories. So singularly, we have like the Friday is always a practice. So we have 3 20-minute practices on a Friday, and then on the Saturday we have 2 qualifying sessions and a race, and then Sunday we have 2 races, and then obviously that's the same for the R3 and the SuperSport. So that's double.
So you're doubling that.
Yeah, which is also double the money because we need double the tyres, double everything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good track time, and you know, it makes you a better rider because you're just constantly going. Really,
you're on the track.
Yeah.
Practice must be pretty difficult for a bike rider. I mean, you're living down here in Warrnambool. We don't have a motorbike track at all, so I don't even know why you're here, to be well and truly honest. But if you're a runner, like the majority of your practice is running. Yeah. If you're a swimmer, the majority of your practice is in the water. But if you're a bike racer, the majority of your practice can't be on the track. One, because you live in Warrnambool and there is no track here. But 2, track days and stuff. I mean, you can't just roll on down to Phillip Island on a Tuesday afternoon because you finish work early and do 50 laps, right?
Yeah, it was one of those hard things. But it's funny you say, you know, you're in Warrnambool, there's no tracks around, but we're so used to travelling to get to all of these tracks. And in Warrnambool, you know, we're 5.5 hours from Phillip Island, we're 5 hours from Winton, we're 3.5 from Broadford, and, you know, 2 hours from Mount Gambier, 6 hours to Taylor Bend. But in Brisbane, like where I used to live, we had Warwick, which was 2 hours away, and then the next closest track to that was 15 at Wakefield in Sydney. So there's actually a lot more tracks here in Warrnambool. We're probably the luckiest place here that there is so many diverse tracks, because like I said, in Brisbane I had one track, which was Warwick, and so
it actually does make sense that you're here.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and obviously, like, you know, you can do motocross racing, and you know, you can do track days at Lake Galea and stuff like that, because really you just need to keep bike fit. But pretty much any, like, leading up to a championship race, there's always like a pre-season test that is there, and then you're not allowed to ride at that track 2 weeks before you race, so no testing is allowed to go whatsoever 2 weeks before
until those Friday.
And then Friday, that's when it all sort of kicks off. So
you mentioned practicing out at Lake Galea. A lot of people probably won't know that's a very different track than, say, Phillip Island, which is where the V8 supercars and you guys obviously race on the road. Lake Galea is mud and jumps and dirt. How does this go on the jumps?
I wouldn't mind taking this thing out. I reckon it wouldn't be too bad. I reckon it would be less scary than the 450. But like I said, I'm lucky that I've got Ted who races as well. So he's got a Suzuki 450 that we often take out to Lake Galea. But I think I'm banned from riding that at the moment. So crashed it a little bit too much. You got brand new plastics on it. Took it out. And
who's the craziest out of superbike riders and dirt supercross riders? Hitting those jumps at that speed. I've ridden a bike that's very powerful and a mate races at Lake Galea. I can't imagine hitting jumps on those things. Like, I was hitting like ruts in the paddock and just felt like I was going to launch.
It's one of those things. I don't know if it's like, you know, who's crazier out of the two. Like, I feel like when you're just in your element, then, you know, I could never be a motocross racer. I'm really bad at it. I suck at racing motocross, and I think that's pretty evident as well. If you see me ride a motocross bike, you'd watch me and be like, she doesn't know what she's doing. You would never think, oh no, she's actually won an Australian championship race. Like, no, she knows what she's doing, but I'm hopeless. And like, same thing as well, you know, Casey Stoner, world champion, goes to V8 supercars and can't race a V8 supercar, and you would think V8 supercar racing would be easy because you're in a cage. It's, you know, a little bit safer, but you know, I reckon we're all just as crazy as one another. Really, it doesn't really matter what discipline you're in. I think we all have a little bit of a screw loose.
I watched Mick Doohan one year. You would know who Mick Doohan was, being a motorbike racer. A lot of people your age would have no idea who Mick Doohan was. World champion, motorbike racer, probably 3 or 4 times. I watched him actually race on 4 wheels in the Race of Champions event in Beijing, and no good. No good.
But you'd think it would. Like, one of my best friends back home, Luke Spalding, he passed away unfortunately, but he used to race race V8s, Formula 3, stuff like that. And I actually got the chance to drive in one of his V8 cars that they did set up for him to race, but unfortunately he passed away before he could. And it was the coolest experience, actually, like driving a V8 supercar. And I was 2 seconds off. I think on my second day that I went, I was like like 2 or 3 seconds off the state lap record around QR, and I was like, it's actually a pretty cool sport.
Yeah, which track was this?
Queensland Raceway.
Queensland Raceway. Yeah, okay, that's QR.
Yeah, but QR. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, then obviously
that would have been a very different. Yeah, obviously a very different experience.
It was crazy. Like, you only used
huge.
to. Yeah, it was just, but I felt safe, but still when I crashed the car, which I did, I locked the brakes off and spun out and off. And I was myself,
a lot of your stories finish it, and then I crashed.
Yeah, I've got a tendency for it. Yeah, I've got a tendency for it. I like to, I always like to push my limits way too much.
I went to one of those, what are they, like an organisation, like a company that gives you V8 Supercar a test, right?
Yeah,
you hire the car and you drive around it. And I was driving around, I was having a great time. But it did cross my mind that this is not like a V8 Supercar. It sounded like one, and the internal sort of sounded like one.
And you feel really cool driving it as well.
Yeah, and I felt really cool. I felt really fast because I was overtaking a lot of people. But what was really funny is I had an earpiece in, I think, in my helmet, so I could hear the guy.
Yeah, I could hear them, yep.
But I kept asking him questions, and after about lap 2, he turned around and said, "Stop talking to me, I can't hear you." I was asking questions like, should I cut out this way and cut back in? I was trying to be very professional about it.
Yep.
I was looking for a contract, I think. But anyway, in the end, he said...
And here you are.
Yeah, and he kept trying to tell me, you need to brake earlier and as you do when you're racing. But I only had 6 laps. I just wanted to thrash it.
You didn't care about braking.
No,
what were the brakes? Like,
yeah, I'd put them on. I just put them on real late. Yeah. Dive in and
get the whole experience.
But actually driving a proper V8 Supercar must be you might make the change if bike racing doesn't work out.
I would have liked to. I'm pretty close like family friends with them. So he actually messaged me the other day saying if I wanted to get back in the bike and do it. Yeah, Luke's dad. Yeah. Messaged me saying, do I want to get back in the car and do an endurance race with Luke's sister Bella? And unfortunately I was here, and because of COVID I couldn't get there, so a little bit of a bummer about that one. But hopefully we can be back in it sooner.
Doors open though.
Yes.
Doors open. Back to learning how to race. I did my research and found out that you rode a motorbike on the same day that you learned how to ride a push bike because you were so determined to show your dad that you could ride a motorbike that you just had to ride the pushy first. That were the rules.
Yeah, it was I guess everyone's always like, where did you start? Like, were your family into it? Like, how did you get involved? I'm like, no, I was a stubborn 2.5-year-old who wanted to do flips on a motorbike after watching the Crusty Demons. That's literally how it started. Like, mum and dad had bikes before me and my sister were born. But once my sister, who's older than me, Jacinta, she was born, they kind of sold all the bikes and thought we should probably be responsible adults. Yeah. And then 2.5 years old, took me to a Crusty Demons race meet. And I literally threw a tantrum on the floor. I said, no, I'm not leaving until I want to do what they do. I want to do backflips on a motorbike. And dad was
saw the other kids getting like ice creams and lollies, and you wanted the bikes.
Yeah, and here's me wanting a bike. Typical 2.5 female girl. Like, my parents were just kind of like, yeah, cool, we've really, done good here, haven't we, Stephen? Got one for Christmas. But the rule was that I couldn't ride the motorbike until I learned how to ride a push bike without training wheels. Right. So I learned how to ride the push bike in less than a day. Apparently I got 10 meters up the road with no one holding me, no training wheels, and apparently did that. And then I literally threw the bike down and then ran into the shed, put my bike on. I said, righto, Dad, I'm ready to go. And he was like, yeah, cool, radio. Anyway, I had my first ride around, and apparently the first thing that I said when I got off the Pee-wee 50 was, oh, Mum, I love it. I don't have to use my legs. It's just so easy to ride. And I'm like, Mum,
did it have training wheels, that bike? Was it
no, back in the day, there was no such thing as getting Pee-wee 50 with training wheels.
Because I've seen kids have them,
nowadays they do, but they didn't back then. And back then, 20 years ago. God,
yeah, because even riding a push bike at 3 is not unimpressive. I think my kids were 5 or older.
I was just that determined, and I think it's because I just want to do backflips on it,
Man, your dad wishes he had taken you somewhere cheaper that night.
Yeah, I know, literally.
Let's talk about costs. Obviously, a weekend is a huge deal. When you roll up to Phillip Island, say for a weekend of SuperSport and R3, you've already got the bike, you've got the leathers, you've got the helmet, you've got all that sort of stuff. How do you get through the weekend? You need fuel, you need tyres, you need new plastics if you bin it, you need entry fees. What's a weekend going to cost you to run?
It adds up, and we don't like to add it up a lot of the time.
Right. Put your fingers in your ears.
A set of tyres cost around $450, $500 for one set, and we go through about 4 sets even, depending on how good I'm going throughout the weekend. Usually 4 sets of tyres for a weekend, and $500.
So you're looking $1,600.
Yep, just in tyres, and then obviously we've got like accommodation, we've got fuel to drive there. All of the plastics for it, and if you crash one of these bikes, luckily with the R3. With the R3, it's a little bit cheaper than most categories, but at the same time, you say cheaper, and I've had a crash before that cost me $4,000 to fix, and didn't cost that much pretty much to buy a bike. So, and same with the helmets. We have the highest quality helmet that you can get. Like I wear an RI helmet, and when you crash that, you can't use your helmet again. So that's $1,200 right there just in your helmet. And it's pretty funny. Riders can have broken bones, they can have complete broken legs, and obviously when you have a broken leg, they got to get you out of your leathers, and they cut them open, and any single rider refuses to get them cut off. Like you could have like my dad had a shattered ankle once riding motard, and he was like, no, you're not cutting these leathers off me, like these are expensive. Like it's already shattered, you can't do much more damage.
I've already
get
trashed
them
the
off
bike.
Me. But look, for a round can cost anywhere upwards of, say $8,000 to $10,000 just for my category. Obviously, the higher you go, the more expensive it goes. Like I think a tire bill for the SuperSport, or even the 600s or even the 1000s, it's upwards of like $50,000 just for the tires.
Just for tires for the year.
Yep.
Wow.
And then obviously you add testing into that as well. Like it's an expensive sport.
Imagine. How many rounds a year are you racing in?
About 7.
7 rounds a year at roughly, 5. Would you say 5 or 8?
Anywhere between 5 to 10 grand. It depends. Like I that time where I ran over my that wasn't even that one, but if you ride off a bike, I wrote off a $25,000 Moto 3 once in one weekend, and that was $25,000 right there, because I couldn't ride it anymore. So even at Phillip Island, I've written an R3 off at Phillip Island at the very last race of the year. I wrote it off at turn 1.
Turn 1 race.
Yeah, turn 1. Yeah. So that wasn't exactly the best way to end the
whole
year.
Weekend to sit there and.
But you go to a round and you're like, yeah, cool, this can happen. But we're all that determined to get out there that, in a way, the cost just doesn't really come to mind, because you always just figure it out.
Everyone's hobby is like that, regardless. It just depends on what you're. So the Yamaha R3, can I see these on the road? Like, how close to this is a Yamaha road bike?
So when we buy the bikes, they're completely road spec. Obviously these bikes you can ride on the road, and that's how they start off as well. If you're poor like me, I actually bought this bike was a write-off from somebody else. So I bought this from the wreckers pretty much for $2,000 and just did it up myself.
Nice.
And that was just instead, so I didn't have to buy a $8,000 brand new R3.
Right.
Obviously we take off all of the we take off all of the road glass and put on race glass, and that's why there's no lights or anything on them. So these are specifically designed race fairings. And then we unplug all of the ABS. We obviously change all of the foot pegs and stuff like that, so that they're all race spec as well. There's a fair bit of stuff that we did to get the bike all ready to race, and it does all add up a fair bit. But these bikes you can ride on the road.
So you ever ridden this one on the road?
Funnily enough, I don't have my road bike license.
No. Well, I was going to ask you if you rode a bike on a daily.
No.
On the daily.
No, I'd lose my license straight away. I know I would.
It'd be too loose.
Yeah, you just go around a roundabout and you just put your knee down. Like, you wouldn't even think twice about it. Like, I know I'd find it pretty boring in a way that you'd have a speed limit, because I'm so used to not having a speed limit. Like, you go down straight at Phillip Island at 200k an hour, and you're just like, come on, like, do you want to go any faster? Like, this is really boring.
And the police pull you over and say, you're riding unsafely. I'm like, well, not really.
Yeah, no, I'm actually not. No. Do you want to see how fast it can go? I can show you if you want.
I'm actually only doing 120, and I've done it more than that. You talk about riding around a roundabout and putting your knee on the ground. I was wondering whether when I look at people riding motorbikes or learning motorbikes and they're rubbing their knee on purpose, rubbing their knee on the ground, sparks, whatever. Well, it used to be sparks, but now they use Kevlar or something, right?
Anymore.
So there's no spark, not cool. And elbows and stuff. Is that something that is that like a natural progression that you just slowly get better and better, or do you just have to rip the Band-Aid off one day and just go, I'm I'm just going to have to get around this corner and rub my knee on the ground just so I can say that I've done it, and then it'll become easier.
It's not a scary thing, funnily enough. And everyone thinks like, oh, doesn't that hurt? Like, doesn't it hurt doing that? Isn't it scary? But, it scared me the very first time that I did do it, but I was also 12 years old or something like that. But, for me, I remember my progression being when I was on the KTM 65. So I didn't start road racing on an actual road bike. I started it on a KTM 65 and just put slick tires on it. So a normal dirt bike you would have on the... Normal dirt bike, and instead of the motocross tires, I put on road tires.
Slick tires,
So I remember I firstly scraped my toe on the ground with my toe sliders, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm cool, I'm really quick. And then it went to your knee, and then I'm not cool enough to get my elbow down. I've gotten it down when I crash, not cool enough quite for the elbow. But no, it's not a scary thing, and it's actually, there's actually a bit of science behind it. Like when you scrape your knee, that's actually your you use it as a basis as to how close you are to the road. So it's also there. So you use your knee if you are going around a corner and you tuck the front, you actually use your knee to pick yourself back up. So some people, their riding technique, they'll plant their leg on the ground and they'll keep it there the whole entire time. But for me, I touch my knee on the ground and then I just pick it up slightly, and I use that as my basis.
As a bit of a feeler.
Yeah, just a bit of, and then and then when you do go to tuck the front, you know that your knee's right there on the ground and you can pick it up to save it. So there's actually a little bit of a technique. Watch some Marc Marquez footage and you'll see exactly what I mean by that one.
I see guys like Marc Marquez and those guys. They don't walk very well anymore. They've all got limps.
Yep, all of them. I think if you see, is it Daryl Beatty?
Daryl Beatty, missing fingers.
Yeah, he's only got like one toe on one of his.
They get them jammed in between the road and the brake levers and stuff, and their fingers in between.
For me as well, like obviously having long hair, my biggest fear is having, and that's why I wear my hair up in a bun like inside my helmet, but my biggest fear is if my hair was sticking out, if I crash and have my hair go through my back tire. That has always been my biggest fear.
Bucket list? No.
Definitely not, but like just getting de-scalped on a motorbike, just not there for me, but it's always
Does that happen?
No, not yet. Fingers
Don't
crossed.
YouTube it just in case it happens.
Touch wood.
You might look it up
in my helmet.
You look it up on YouTube and find 4,000 videos of it happening, and you'll never ride again.
Probably wouldn't do it.
You might have to
shave my hair off.
You would have to actually shave. Yeah, you wouldn't never ride again. You'd shave your head. Is that your aim? Like, would you love to be...
I'd love to be a professional racer, but, it's one of those that, an actual professional racer racing in the World Championship, but you can only go as far as your wallet can go. Right. Your talent can take you so far, but anything above that, you need to have the money to back you. Like, I've had opportunities to race in a World Championship. I've had opportunities to race in a Spanish Championship, a Junior European Championship, but each and every one of them come with a cost. And it doesn't matter, even if you race in the World Championship, everyone's still paying for a ride. No one's really, unless you're, Marc Marquez or something like that, Fabio Quartararo, those kind of people, they're getting paid. But, even the top riders in the Moto3 class and whatnot, they
almost
are
renting
all
bikes,
paying, they're all paying their ride in a team. So, I'd classify them as a professional racer. Obviously they do it as a full-time job, but there's still somebody behind them paying for that ride. So
sponsors,
you can't getting a free ride is very close to impossible.
And especially in Australia, I'd imagine it's not a massive sport.
No, not at all. No.
So if money was no object, so I gave you a blank check and said, knock yourself out, I'm an extremely rich podcaster. What would that do for you? Like, what could you achieve if money was no object?
I could definitely race in a World Championship, and like I said, I've been given those opportunities plenty of times in the past, but just never had the money to back me with it to help me do it. And there's so many talented people in Australia racing motorbikes who could go so far in the sport, but just can't afford to do it. And I'm not the only one who could go over there and go overseas and race. There's so many riders in Australia who could, and it's sad in a way that the talent does only get you so far, and anything more than that you need to have upwards of $200,000 to race.
When I was young, I always wanted to race go-karts. That was my thing that I wanted to do. And Dad would always say it's very cheap to get into racing go-karts. So for you you could go and buy a setup for a couple of $1,000. You get some tires with it, you chuck it on the back of the trailer or whatever, and you could race and you'd have a great time, but you'd be back of the pack.
Yeah.
If you want to win, then you start to look at 10 grand, 15 grand. You get
And that's what it is here in Australia as well. Like, that's what it is. Even now, like, you know, I didn't race. Obviously, we haven't raced this year, and last year as well. I only did half of the season for other reasons. But, you know, right now there's a new model of an R3 that's come out that I can't afford to buy. And that R3 is, the spec of it is just a lot better. The engines inside it is better. Right. All of the suspension is better as well. And, you know, so I'm already, if I was to race an Australian Championship next year, I'm already that kind of one step behind because I don't have the money behind me to buy a bike. But I still love what I do. I still believe in myself when it comes to racing, and I know that I can still be up the front. But, you know, the sport is just ever changing, and, you know, the hardest thing with my class as well is that it's the progression for a lot of children. So, you know, a lot of people in that class are 14, 15 years old. Right. So, you know, a lot of their parents obviously are paying for it. And, you know, I was the same when I was that age. My parents were paying for it, and I was riding a $25,000 Moto 3. But the second that I had to start paying for it, I couldn't obviously afford that. And that's why I went to the R3 class. So, you know, I do everything that I can. And, you know, so does Ted, my partner. And, you know, we just do what we can to make it work.
How many people in your class are going to turn up next year with that new R3?
Pretty much nearly all of them.
Really? Yeah. Most of them will turn up with that new bike?
Yeah. Yep.
And you'll be relegated to the back with...
well, no, because I won't
but
hopefully.
Hopefully not, but you'll have pure motivation to drive past them.
Yeah. And, you know, there's still nothing wrong with this bike. Yeah. You know, there's really nothing wrong with it. But obviously, everything is always changing, and they change to make things better. But hopefully I can get myself another bike. But I'm pretty happy. I love my little baby.
You love this little bike?
So, yeah. This is my first bike, actually, that I purchased myself and completely got ready all myself. So
what's its name?
I don't actually have a name for this.
Really? I thought you'd have to.
Grown up having names. Like, my Moto 3 was called Rex. My Moroaki 250 was called Penelope. Like, always had a name, but I don't know, just nothing stuck.
Yeah, and you just haven't,
It's open. If anyone wants a name for this bike, like, go for it.
Right. I laughed at the seat when I came in because I thought the seat had been removed and you were like reupholstering it or something. But that's the seat.
It. Yep.
There's not much to it.
No, there's absolutely nothing to it at all.
It's not built for comfort, is it?
No, not at all. And then obviously that's where you grip on with your knees when you're braking, with that. And
yeah. We're getting close to being finished. It's a it's a pretty amazing sort of sport that you do, and obviously very uncommon. Rub the magic lamp and the genie comes out and you get your wish. Do you wish for you to have the money and to have the backing to mix it with the best in your mixed categories, in those super sports or the 600s or higher Australian superbikes? In the mixed category, or do you wish for more women to be involved so that you can race in your own category?
I would definitely go to have the money and the backing. I've never liked the idea of having an all-female class because, again, that just segregates us and just is still, it's just, if anything, it'll just broaden that whole misconception that we need to have our own class and that we can't be competitive. And, you know, there's been talks of having a female class, and I've always been the first one to say, no, I don't want it. Like, we don't need it. Like, you know, there's the female classes in motocross, and there's a whole separate world championship for motocross female riders. But, you know, if Anna Carrasco can win a world championship against males, being the only female there, you know, and she can win a world championship, if Avalon Biddle can win a New Zealand championship, then why do we need it? So take the 100% go the money.
Take the money. So in order to finance this, you're a journalist with a minor in criminology and criminal justice and sociology. You sound like a cross between Batman and Superman. You know, with your lair here, you know, your bat den, with your bike that doesn't have a name.
Yeah, I know.
And sad, studying people's criminal histories and blah blah blah. What do you do with that?
So yeah, obviously the journalism came in because I've just always been, a lot of our stuff is all, televised live. I've just always been around anything to do with sort of broadcast media and stuff like that, and I've just always really liked it. I did a few news reports and stuff with reporters from Channel 7 and Channel 9 and whatnot, and
Totally Wild.
Totally Wild.
Yes.
Yeah. That
I grew up watching Totally Wild after school.
Cringe a little bit when I watched that back little 15-year-old Tayla, but and every single time that I would do a news story with them and get interviewed or something like that, everyone would always say, like, you talk really, really well for someone of your age. And I would always brush it off, and then did the Totally Wild story, and
it was very professional.
Yeah, she and Ellie, the girl who did the report with me, we sort of finished the day of filming, and she was like, have you ever thought of doing this as a job? And I was like, oh yeah, I've had a few people say it to me, but no, I never really thought about it. And she was like, I reckon you should, like, you've got the personality, you speak really well, you clearly know what you're talking about, sort of thing. And
you're still in touch with her?
Yeah, I am. Yep.
Really?
So she still follows everything that I do.
Cool.
And then the final sort of straw with my journalism was when I did a live report, like the MotoGP pre-show. That was at the Fox Sports Studios in Sydney, and did a live show. And finished that, and they all just said as well, they were like, you should do this as a job. And someone from Fox Sports kind of guided me through it for the next few years, just making sure that I was still going to do a journalism degree, and
really?
Here I am. So
you got their eyes on you.
Yeah, hopefully. But I did it because motorsport's been my life since the day that I can remember, and I know that one day I'm not going to be able to race anymore full time or anything like that, but there was no way that I could just step away from the sport altogether, because it's defined who I am, it's shaped who I am, it's made me the person who I am today. And to walk away from that and not do anything with all of those years experience, I feel like it would be a little bit of a waste. So to combine my passion with my sport, my passion for the industry, and just stay in there, and all those connections that I made, it's a no-brainer, really. You
could do a commentary from under the helmet.
Yeah.
Just mic up the whole time, just talk the whole time.
Did you see the Sam Mack episode from Sam Mack came to Phillip Island before one of our race meets and went on the back of Troy Bayliss?
Oh.
He swore the whole way down the main straight on live TV. It was
so you like the Weatherman or something?
Yeah, the Weatherman.
Right,
the
crazy weather segments they do.
It was the best thing I'd ever watched.
I just beat the whole time.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. How do you sit on the back of one of them? There was a purpose-built.
So you can get pillion bikes.
Purpose-built two-seater.
Yep. But yeah, so that's where the passion sort of started, and where I am now. So obviously I'm not in motorsport journalism at the moment, but I'm pretty content with where I am at Fitz Media. Doing all the local news stuff there. But hopefully, I'm still young. I still have a lot more years behind me to race.
I think Fitzy's got you earmarked for a lot of speedway work. Do you know speedway?
I never really followed it a great deal. My friend Luke, who I was talking about earlier, he used to take me to the speedway back when we were both in school.
Archerfield?
Archerfield Speedway. Yep, we would sort of pack up all our school bags, and his dad would pick us up from school, and we'd go off to Archerfield and go race, watch all the speedway cars for the night. But that was it really.
A while
so
ago.
Yeah. But anything with a motor with an engine in it, I'm pretty happy to.
You might get to drive one of them. They might give you the keys to one of those.
Oh, look, with my crash history record,
fences are a bit close.
Yeah, yep.
No gravel traps.
Yeah, no.
All right, Taylor, I think we've just about got through everything we need to get through. I do think it's incredible that what you do and the amount of money that you put into it. But I do believe that with the motivation that's clearly coming out, that you will go far. Just need to find I don't know, some sort of rich benefactor or someone that.
Yeah, I know.
Someone that's got a lot of money.
I did the wrong thing by dating someone who raced a motorbike as well, because I don't even have a boyfriend who has money, because we're basically broke as anything, but we've got two really cool bikes to show from it. So
any money that comes in gets
out straight away.
You have to wrestle him for it to see who gets to spend
on
their
literally,
bike.
it gets to a stage with racing where even when you're working and you don't think like, oh, I just finished a day of work, you're actually just like, cool, well, that paid for a set of tyres today. Like, cool, right, on to the next day. Like, what will tomorrow pay for?
Don't worry about food.
No, 2-minute noodles, it's fine. It's a really healthy diet.
2-minute noodles and Michelin tyres.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that's what your wage goes to.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks for classing me as an interesting person.
Absolutely. Sure are. All right. Goodbye.
See ya.